session of 5th edition of BBB International Expo and Summit 2026. Hope you had great conversations over the networking lunch. And now it's time for our next thematic session, which is on windy times, onshore and offshore gushes. We have our esteemed panelists with us, and we are now going to begin the session. Once again, I request everyone sitting in the last row to kindly come forward, and please keep your mobile phones on the silent mode so that you don't disturb the speakers. Thank you. For this discussion, I would like to invite on stage our moderator, Mr. Aditya Pyasi from IWTMA. So, a very warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our moderator, who is going to have a wonderful discussion and some great questions. We also have with us Mr. Dinesh Jagdale from Suzlon Energy. Sir, we request you to kindly join us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Dinesh Jagdale. A very warm welcome to you, sir. I now request Dr. Prabir Kumar Das from MNRE to kindly come and join us on stage. A very warm welcome to you, sir. We now request Dr. Deepak Yadav from CEEW to kindly join us on stage. A very warm welcome to you, sir. And we are expecting Mr. Manish M. Chaudhary from Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, CERC. He'll be here any moment. So, once again, with some energy, please put your hands together for our esteemed panelists, and we are going to have our thematic session on windy times, onshore and offshore gushes. Over to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A warm welcome to all the esteemed panelists for taking out your valuable time. Thank you for making this time and going through the narrative and paper that IWTMA has prepared for this session. A brief about the session I would like to give. I thought that it's bioenergy and wind are two different segments of energy transition. So why not take this opportunity to talk about something which is a novel idea, and some food for thought can be given. It is also emanated from the discussions that I've had with my esteemed panelists and the sector at large. So let me take this opportunity to bring out a context on which we will be talking. So India's energy mix is somewhat like this. We have 31% of our energy coming through oil and gas, roughly 70% of our energy mix through coal. Now, not 70, 55 to 60%. And this 55 to 60% is both electricity as well as direct coal usage. And then 10 to 12% from renewable and hydro. Going forward, in the energy transition journey, the aim is to increase the size of pie for the green energy, which will come in form of solar, wind, biogas, and more importantly, from biogas will also reduce the consumption of LPG, LNG, and would help in building up the strength of energy security of India. At the same time, electricity, which is about 20% of the energy mix as of now, is expected to go to 40% by 2050, and a major portion of it, or rather 80% of portion of it, may be expected through renewable energy, especially from wind, which we'll focus in this segment. Now, in this energy transition journey, while wind and biomass sit at two ends of the spectrum, the problems that they face are complementary in nature, and I'll tell in a second how. Wind is difficult to deploy because large tracts of land, especially ROW, are required, and involvement of community or positive participation of community remains a challenge. They have to be compensated properly, that is a one. But then the benefits should be visible tangibly, which is mostly not the case. They see transmission towers and wind turbines, so that involvement is very important. And at the other ends of the spectrum, we see that for biomass, the problem is that the community wants to give the biomass, which comes after the harvest season, but there aren't enough tools or baling equipment or transportation equipment that is available during that period. And forcefully or willy-nilly, these farmers have to burn this biomass. Surprisingly, price is not a very big disconnect. This infrastructure is the main disconnect. So, community participation is required for wind, whereas community infrastructure is required for biomass. And we'll try, what we are trying to say is, can we bring up a kind of a proposal wherein these village panchayats, gram panchayats are provided with a kind of a package for collection of biomass infrastructure, baling, as well as right price for biomass, especially these gram panchayats which play a positive role in resolving the land and ROW issues for the wind projects. So this is the idea, and sirs, I think it has also emanated from some discussions that I've had over the course of a few years with you. And I would like to first start with a question to Dr. Dash. Sir, MNRE being the parent ministry for renewable energy, both for wind and for biomass, bioenergy, has played a very positive role in the promotion of these two resources. Sir, going forward, do you see some kind of policy measures that can be taken for a positive community role and resolving of these land and ROW issues, both for, for wind projects, through this community involvement in this thing?
Thank you, Aditya-ji. Before I directly come to your question, let me just tell one more similarity what I see between biomass and wind. I think both these RE sectors are the initial drivers of the Indian RE journey altogether. I think since 2000, wind was one of the fast runner up to 2015. Even by that time, biomass was also in the forefront. In fact, this ministry at certain point of time used to be called as a gobar gas ministry because of the popularity it has on those gobar gas plants, and family type biogas plants. It was so popular among the rural community. And yeah, you are correct. In terms of engaging the community with wind, it is very difficult because wind, the scale is huge, and here basically it is driven by big investors, or at certain point of time it was driven by the MSME sector, but mostly captive consumption was happening, industrialists, small industries. So it doesn't have any direct connection with the local community there. But in some way, right now when this right-of-way land issues, they are actually posing problem for further capacity addition. We need to think of how to actually engage the community with the project so that they will feel ki, okay, it is our project. Once that feeling is there, maybe the execution will be a little smoother. So in that respect, there are various models how to engage. We can think of even, some kind of revenue sharing, some kind of partnership with them. But again, all these things will have certain implication on the project finance altogether. So we have to think of how to see if the project is viable, at the same time the community is directly linked to the project itself. And another thing can also be, sharing certain amount of electricity even. I don't know how it will work, but at least in the rural area, if those common places, those lighting needs must be there, if certain amount of energy can directly be fed into them, so they will have that feeling, okay, this is the turbine, we are also getting some share of the energy. Because many times it may happen that they don't have the electricity, but a powerhouse is running behind their home. So that is, that kind of feeling can also be avoided. And biomass certainly can play a role because of its small scale and distributed nature. If certain kind of financial model can be thought through, that some whatever spending, definitely the wind developers are compensating properly to the landowner or the land owning a person who is actually allowing them the right of way. But the landowner, vicinity land, there is, I don't know, as of now, to my knowledge, there is no compensation mechanism. So in that way, if some certain fund can be arranged, either through some kind of policy or scheme from the ministry or through the company or the project owner, then making them some kind of this kind of distributed projects so that they will connect. Okay, because of this big wind project, we also have, got this benefit of the biomass. So that kind of things can certainly be thought through.
Right, sir. So I think my key takeaways would be, you see that there is some kind of a possibility because there is a dire need to involve the community, but it is important to do a financial modeling, how it can be, how it is possible. And then at the same time, projects should not get burdened and their financial viability should be ensured. I'll just take this opportunity to welcome Shri Manish Chaudhary, Joint Chief CERC, who could join us in the panel discussion. Thank you, sir. Now coming to Sir Dinesh, sir. Sir, you have seen this sector both from the government side. You've led the initiatives from government side, as well as you're now leading the initiatives from the development side, as well as O&M, EPC, every segment of it. Sir, how do you see the project viability would be ensured through this kind of a proposal? First of all, you can have a view on whether it actually makes sense for a development company or a developer to have this kind of an arrangement. And then if at all the financial viability has to be ensured through a policy measure, what should be the key pillars of it?
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon to all. So the first time I think my friend Gaurav has brought wind and biomass together in this particular conference. And so if you look at these two different sources of renewable energy sources, both are basically in terms of producing electricity, but the kind of impact that these sources or these projects bring to the community is slightly different. From a biomass perspective, there is a huge impact, as we can say, because biomass is one which is produced by the farming community. It has its own issues and it has its own importance as well. Issues in the sense, when it is produced, it's a surplus sometimes, then there is a problem of how to dispose it. But the beauty of this biomass is that it can be put to use to produce electricity or to produce energy. Whereas wind, obviously, it's a natural resource. It has its, the footprint is larger in terms of the size and scale it has. And therefore, Aditya ji, when you mentioned about the problems that the developers come across in terms of having wind energy projects, but there are problems on both sides. The problems are there on the biomass side, problems are there on the wind side as well. Now, how can we bring this together? What happens normally in the development mode is, obviously, to get community on the side of the project development, there are a lot of activities that a developer does. And those activities are driven not by any financial gain, but to ensure that the community is on the side of the project through whether it's the CSR activities or whether it's to fulfill the demand of the community. And there are various measures, and that's normally done. But I have not seen something on the scale that we are talking. Obviously, the concept is new. We need to think through this, but according to me, it's not that difficult. It's doable in terms of the ideas that is floated around. We need to really see how the community will actually give their own opinion towards this. When we say biomass, basically, can it be used for community-based cooking, or can it be based for microgrids, or can it be used for off-grid purposes? So there is a lot of nuances to this to be thought through. One during a policy, and we were discussing offline a few days back, that such kind of innovative methods would need some prototypes, some pilot scale demonstration measures, where we can actually see the impact, see the kind of effort it has to be made to do these projects, but also what kind of benefits that the community will get. But on a larger scale, Aditya, I think this concept can be taken through in some sort of a desktop-based policy-making effort. But we should really look some nodal agencies or the state nodal agencies to look at it, see if this can be done on a pilot basis. Given the importance that the biomass has, explain them about the benefits, and then probably reflect that learnings and experiences into well-thought policy making on a national scale. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, very broad perspective on the two different segments, and key message that I can derive from this is first, some pilot projects need to be figured out. Of course, it will require the financial modeling and everything, and then maybe once the pilot projects succeed, we take it for a policy level kind of structure. And SNA's involvement would be critical in this part. So moving on to the next panelist. Just before that, I think some interesting figures that I saw on this topic. We see that since in 2014 there was utilization of only 8 tons per day of biomass in the country. Today we are at 920 tons per day kind of a figure, and this is as per the minister's address. So significant progress has been made in biomass usage also, just like solar and wind have scaled up. Wind has come to now 56 gigawatt. So all these guns are firing, and there is a multi-vector growth. So with this perspective, Manish sir, you are looking at the overarching regulatory framework in India. Regulations are being made for biomass, for cogeneration. They've played a very significant role in the development of the sector, as well as the RPO regulations and then subsequent tariff determination regulations and everything. So when you see these two different segments from a regulatory perspective, do you see some kind of synergy? I'm sure it's not a mature idea for that level kind of a thing, but overarching, if you can let us know what are the primary key pillars which we should see for some kind of a synergy in these two segments, and what are the key happenings that have been happening?
Good afternoon, all of you, and thank you, Aditya, for inviting me on this interesting panel discussion. First of all, the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission is not directly dealing with the designing of this community-based participations and the biofuel, because it is a state subject. But of course, there are a certain regulatory intervention like promotion of renewables and the energy security, sustainability. So there always, and the development of the markets, interstate transmissions. So there the regulatory central commission's role is involved. As far as the participation is concerned, and as you rightly pointed out, the synergy of the biomass fuels, bioenergy with the power sectors. So there is a lot of synergy. First of all, the energy transitions, which the driving force of the energy transition is a clean energy, and where there is a lot of core principle like inclusivity, decentralized distribution generations. So the bioenergy fit into that business models perfectly, and it fosters, it complements the principles, basic objectives of the energy transition. So that the first synergy will establish with the goal of energy transitions and the use of bioenergy with decentralized distributed generations or the decentralized renewable plants. And where wind was also one of the small projects. So there also it can be fit into the as a better business model. Secondly, the community participation, there is also a lot of synergies into that. The bioenergy can be used as a waste, yeah, the residual crops and other things can also use as a raw material for the energy generations. Secondly, there could be ownership participations. Thirdly, there could be a participation in the consumption of the energy. So there is a lot of avenues is there where the synergy can be established in the participations of the community participations in the energy generations. As far as the generations is decentralized generation is concerned, and the using with the wind or the solar, so that also there is also a lot of synergies is there because the small renewable energy developers their presence is there already in the rural sectors, in the rural segments. So when their presence is there, their infrastructure is there, so that can be optimized if they can also couple the use of the bioenergy with their existing generating plants. So that is the additional. So there also synergies is being established, can be established with the small renewable generating plants like a wind also. Addition to that, last point, the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission is always encouraging the use of bioenergy. We also specify the regulatory framework for the use of municipal solid waste. And secondly, the co-firing of the biomass, that regulatory framework is also we specified. So as a central electricity, from regulatory perspective, the use of bioenergy is being considered as one of the complementary to the energy transitions and towards the clean energy use. So that is getting encouraging, a lot of encouragement is there through the renewable energy purchase obligations. Some incentives is also there, some merit order operations priorities. So these are the framework which can be thought of for the use of bioenergy coupled with the renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Quite a wide perspective. Key takeaways that I see is that you see that biomass energy generation can play a key role in decentralized energy, districts or avenues, and there is an enabling mechanism for municipal solid waste and cogeneration that has been created. Of course, the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission does not deal with the community benefits directly, but and we understand that, but somehow the regulations will play a role in integration of these two segments together. So thank you for your inputs. Now I'll come to Dr. Deepak Yadav from CEW, and Dr. Deepak, we see that a lot of CEW has done a lot of research and insightful reports have come on these topics. Especially you've written on the CBG as well as green hydrogen, and these can play a positive role in the abatement of usage of gas. And at the same time, wind has to play a role in increasing its pie in the generation. So what are the key insights that you can provide from the leading research reports that you CEW might have come out with for this kind of a cross-community involvement and how it can be developed in the coming years?
Thank you, Aditya. And great things begin by ideation and conversation. This is something that I very strongly believe in. And thank you, Aditya, ITD, WMA, and the organizers for thinking through a new concept. And that is the concept that we are discussing today. Now, we at CW very strongly believe in the concept of a green economy, and recently we released a report on Viksit Bharat 2047, and we also aspire to be Atmanirbhar by that time. So, if you look at biopower and 2G, 2G biofuels alone, by 2047, which is in the next 20 years, we are looking at a job estimation, of around 600,000 jobs. These are full-time jobs that can be created in this particular economy. We are looking at total cumulative investment of around $28 billion, again coming into bioeconomy, and we are looking at a market size of around $12 billion every year from the sale of power and biofuels which are produced. So bioenergy, when it comes to biopower and 2G biofuels, is something which will go a long distance in India. But there are other options as well beyond these two traditional end users. For example, there is a Satat scheme on compressed biogas, for example, where we estimate that this was a few years ago, but if we commission about 648 TPD of CBG capacity, we are looking at 21,000 jobs that can be created, and that is how communities can benefit from. But when it comes to CBG, I think there are problems, and everybody is aware of those problems. I'll not spend time talking about those problems, but what are the potential solutions that we are looking for here, right? Now, if you look at the delta price difference between the cost at which the companies want to sell CBG and the price at which the government wants to buy it, a substantial portion of the cost is the cost of purification and cleaning of the biogas, and also the compression of the biogas itself. Now, this particular bottleneck can be overcome with the localized use of biogas. And, if you are looking at vertically integrated, sources, for example, if you are looking at dairy industry, they can produce biogas locally, and they can consume it also locally. And if there's an opportunity, couple it with wind micro turbines, which can give you power even under low wind PLF, for example. And this power can be used locally, for running chillers, for example. So that is one opportunity that we are looking at. And yes, this might not be possible across all geographies. This might not be possible, across all business models. But in a few sectors like dairy, we can start. And in this particular case, the financing can also be through multiple sources. For example, we can look at some grants coming from central government. We can look at some CSR money which is coming into this picture, and we can also potentially tap into the voluntary carbon markets for ensuring that these kind of concepts actually
Deepak,
realize. So that is one option that we are looking at.
Deepak,
Yes.
if I may request, if you keep it a little bit far, it will help us. Volume is too high, so that is causing
So
a
I
problem.
need to keep my mic a bit
little bit far.
little bit slow.
Little bit far from you.
Farther. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was the first, concept which I was thinking, and we can discuss whether this is commercially viable or not. The second option is something which is coming from the sustainable aviation fuel angle, correct? So on sustainable aviation fuel, at least for domestic industry, it's very expensive. But there is CORSIA norm which is coming in, which means the sustainable aviation fuel, whether it is from alcohol to jet pathway or through a power to liquid or a power biomass to liquid pathway, that is something which is another low-hanging opportunity for India. And our preliminary assessment indicates that sustainable aviation fuel using a combination of wind plus biomass will be around 20-25% expensive. But when it is for international flights, that premium can be borne by flyers, right? So that is another opportunity that we are looking at. And in this particular case, because India is abundantly blessed with biomass, we should take a lead in developing what should be a taxonomy for sustainable aviation fuel globally. Because we don't want to be in a situation where 2 years down the line, the sustainable aviation fuel that we produce is something which is not acceptable internationally. So we should learn lessons from our previous experience and take lead and initiative in developing these taxonomies as well. And once the demand is there because of CORSIA obligations, starting from 1% blending by 2027, going all the way to 5% blending by 2030, we are looking at significant market opportunity there as well. So that is the second opportunity for wind plus biomass combination that is there. And the third is for green hydrogen. Today almost everybody talks about electrolytic process for green hydrogen production. But the thing is, when these project developers, they are supplying green hydrogen, they are not looking at dispatchable, green hydrogen supply. So they are looking at 70-75% availability of green hydrogen, which is obtained from electrolyzers. So if the remaining 20-25% can be sort of, uptaken by the bio route, that is also an opportunity that we are looking at. Also, again, the techno-economics needs to be worked upon. But if you look at industrial clusters in India, beyond fertilizers and refineries, for about 40-45% of the energy in boilers, for example, is obtained from biomass only, right? So if biomass is something which is commercially viable there, then it can become commercially viable potentially in case of small industrial clusters as well. So we need to look at these three broader opportunities and do a project level evaluation. Which are the low-hanging fruits? Where do we actually see these kind of projects taking off? What are the policy levers that we need to unlock? And how can we go about financing these projects as well? So broadly, the focus should be on these aspects as well, Aditya.
Thank you, Deepak. I think you brought a lot of points to the table, and I was trying to cope up with that. It's interesting, there is a lot of investment that is going to come in bioenergy, about 28 billion if I got it correctly. And then you mentioned rightly that the cost of purification of biomass requires a significant amount of power, not in terms of comparison with industrial power, but still a significant amount, about 30% if I remember correctly, is the cost of power. And then for sustainable aviation fuel, of course, these two sectors will play an important role. Thanks for that. Sir, now with Dr. Dash, now I'll like to shift the gears a bit, and I would request you to bring out a clear perspective of what the government is looking at from the industry. Industry has a role to play at the ground while policies are created at the national level. What is the government looking at the kind of positive role that the industry can play? And I would request you to shed light on wind industry. What positive role can the community, not the community, sorry, industry play so that the government's policies are implemented in the letter and spirit that it is designed for? Any expectations from you?
Of course, there are quite a few, I would say.
Okay.
You see, when we have already laid down some clear-cut policy framework with a kind of, target also in front of us, so we would certainly like industry to kind of implement those policies in a letter and spirit to realize those targets. That is number one. And number two, for wind industry, in fact, Make in India is one of our primary thing, I would say, because it is in the RE sector. This is one sector which even before this Atmanirbhar slogan was there, we are actually Atmanirbhar in the sector. We could able to indigenize more than 70% of these components in terms of value addition. So even if right now our market size is growing, and we would like the local content also to grow proportionately, and our dependency with other countries should decline. Although manufacturing capability is already there, but we would like to go further, down to the parts of parts, even up to the raw material level. Even we would like our export market to grow in the coming days. That is number one. And number two, in fact, I will say the post bidding era, 2017 onward, although capacity addition increased because of lot of institutional investment that came to this market, but somehow the structured growth in the RE, which should be there, and it is more relevant to wind, in a sense that you need the project preparatory activity at least 1.5 years or 2 years well before the actual physical activity for the project commissioning starts, right from actually resource assessment, which is a must for at least 1 year of data. That means even to install the mast, another 6 months is required. So 1.5 years is a must. Then to identify the land, to acquire the land, do the entire feasibility. So probably in this bidding era, somewhere there is a disconnect. Right now, lot of project delays or the situation we are facing is the project is awarded to someone, he is looking for connectivity, but enough connectivity is available in the market, because when you approach the CTU says ki this much of connectivity is already there in the market, where the project is not getting realized. Similarly, land is there, but it is with someone else's name. So, putting all these ingredients at a one place with one developer and getting the project executed smoothly, that is the primary challenge we are facing. Maybe we need to look at it. I don't know how exactly, I don't have the proper answer to this, but we need to structure the development in such a way, all the ingredients are in a place in a structured manner so that execution should be slow. And thirdly, maybe the developers to also look at different geographies. Little bit, geographical spread is also need of the hour, I will say, because most of the people actually only looking at Rajasthan, Gujarat, or right now to some part Karnataka. Maybe they need to look at other states as well, so that a geographical spread can be ensured.
Any specific states that come to your mind?
I am from Odisha, and and Odisha is certainly they have moved ahead,
Yes.
and I would say ki industry also supported them well. I am expecting by next 2-3 years we will definitely see some wind projects in Odisha, but probably even we can look at West Bengal
Okay, West Bengal.
and in northeastern states. But I know in northeast states maybe for bigger wind turbines there are not much scope, but in 250, 300 kilowatt. So in the moderate scale, probably we can have some projects there. And even we can look at islands also. Andaman, Nicobar, Lakshadweep, I know the wind speed is very low, but if you are actually replacing diesel, even if you can produce the energy at 15 rupees per unit, that is worth doing. And I don't see ki even if the wind speed is 5 meter per second, we can certainly generate RE at that price. So we have to look at those islands also, if in some way we can develop, give them an alternate option to diesel.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. Thanks for your views. I think there is a need to introspect on that. Manish sir, quickly connecting with what sir said, the gestation period for wind projects is relatively high, because you have to install wind mast, have some data. It's not as fast as solar, and in the preparation for that project, it requires aerodynamics understanding, etc. also a little bit. The connectivities are gone, and if I may quote, I was interacting with some of the members in the commission, and I bounced off with this idea. So can we have some kind of connectivity reservation or some different timelines for project development of wind as compared to other resources? Is that a possibility that we can look at? Because it's a straitjacket thing, 18 months, develop the solar plant, develop the wind plant. So how do you see how to optimize this connectivity that is going away in a haphazard manner? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so your question is very pertinent and very important, that many developers are facing this issue. But as far as the optimization is concerned, you must be aware of the recent regulatory framework which we have specified about the solar and non-solar connectivity. So that is one of the aspect where definitely the optimization is also there. But as far as the timeline and gestation period is concerned regarding the connectivity of the wind as well as the transmission system, gestation period is required. So mismatch is always there. But one of the aspect which can be issues can be resolved is the planning and conceptualization stage, where the project is being developed and the connectivity which is applied. So here what is happening nowadays, that all the wind developers, wind project developers and solar project developers, when they conceptualize connectivity, they are being applied either too early or too short during when the project is near to the commissioning. So there is So that is why there's a different kind of a market requirement is there, and the application timing is different. So that is why all the problem is arising with reference to the transmission system development. Otherwise, there could be some sort of a mechanism, kind of a uniform mechanism if can be established like a conventional thermal generating station, where the connectivity is being applied when the project is conceptualizing at the conventional thermal plant. So if similar kind of some sort of practice can be developed, or the guidelines can be developed, then there could be bottlenecks or the congestions of those connectivity, number of connectivity procurers. So that kind of situations can be overcome, and then the issue is that issue of the mismatch and the lot of demands for the connectivity when the COD is near. So those kind of situations can be addressed. So this is the administrative solutions. Second is the reduction of the transmission development, but those also difficult. Only one solutions can be the small network. Suppose if the project is connected at the state level or the distributed level, where the transmission network development is very less and can be developed in shorter period. So there the synergy can be established and that can be made. But as far as the interstate concerns, the transmission system development and the involvement of work is such a it's very huge. So that is where the time always mismatch would be there in the interstate. But the state and distributed level, if you can go, if you can go at a lower voltage level, then this issue can be addressed to a certain extent. That's all.
Okay. So looks a bit tricky, but I would like to quickly take thoughts from Dinesh sir on this specific aspect. Now that we are discussing this on this connectivity and gestation period for the wind projects, you've seen projects quite closely in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, Maharashtra. Sir, how do we solve this puzzle of connectivity, booking, and then getting it for high wind CUF zones in near the requisite substations? Any thoughts on that?
So there are two types of interventions, Aditya, we are as industry, we are trying to recommend. You have seen, this is the 31st year of wind, since wind really started its commercial establishment in India. It's 1995 to 2026. If you look at the steady growth rate of wind into this country, and if you really look at what were these policy enablers that brought accelerated sustainable development of wind projects, we will find an answer. Now, what is that answer is basically, there are two important stakeholders in this project development. One is that who produces the turbine, who is the technology owner. The second one is, in fact, there are three. The second one is who creates the enabling infrastructure. When I say enabling infrastructure, it's the land, it's the permits, it's the connectivity, seeking the connectivity, developing the road, building the internal lines, external lines, substations, etc. And the third entity is that one who invests and creates an asset for himself to generate power and sell it as a business entity. Now, in all these three elements, all these three structural pillars of wind energy growth, and I can reflect that even expanded to renewable energy growth, the sustainable progress happens when all the three sectors are allowed to do their work well in advance. Now, when we take well in advance is that the development that has to happen prior to the investment that comes in actual assets. The manufacturers do their turbines, manufacture the turbines, and then, so if we allow them to do, so by doing this, what happens is there is no interference, the community engagement is proper, and the overall ecosystem gets on a balance zone, that prior to the investment that the end user does, your infrastructure is ready, your turbines are ready. And this has been, and India has seen that sustainable growth across years. Probably we should congratulate MNRE for this year being the highest in the country, but the second highest was in 2017, which was pre the era where IPP concept and the concept of bidding started. So if you value that approach, if we give justice and if we really appreciate that the kind of efforts the OEMs does, the development community does, and obviously the investment community does, we will see that if all of them three to get together and they get space, it will happen. So my sincere submission to the Government of India is the concept of allowing the development to happen much in advance by those who can do that. Who can do it? There are specialized community who can do development. There are OEMs who can invest into this and can do development and then transfer the connectivity. So my first task is give us that flexibility to develop the infrastructure well in advance, allow the connectivity and other aspects to be taken and then transferred to the end user, that is investor. The second is, and very peculiar to India, we are such a large country, but our wind energy potential is limited to 9 states. And those 9 states are situated in the southwest region of this country. Therefore, wind has to be installed in this country, is only in these 9 states. And in these 9 states, there are certain pockets. Wind is obviously has its own constraint that it cannot be utilized anywhere as we see in solar. So it is geographically constrained to this particular site location. Therefore, if a substation, whether it's a pooling grid, CTU, STU substation coming in a wind zone area, our sincere request is that particular substation capacity should be earmarked to wind on a priority basis for a particular period. And if that particular period, the project doesn't come, then obviously it has its own choice to go to another technology. But it should be prioritized that in a wind zone, in a wind approved zone by National Institute of Wind Energy, if we find it is a commercial based wind speeds where it can be a commercial project can come, in those areas, substation connectivity should be prioritized only to the projects only to wind projects and not to the other projects. But the other projects can come at a later stage. And that's how CRC has come with the non-solar or solar connectivity. But first let the main resource, which is probable, which is approximately to that substation, should be given the priority. These are our 2 submissions, and we are working on that, we feel, and government is very, very has accepted this in terms of their thought process. We hope that the regulator also looks at this very closely, and we get into this so that our demand of 10 gigawatt a year of wind capacity addition in next 5 years is fulfilled.
Thank you, sir. Beautifully brought out. I actually like that concept of whosoever knows the best about development should be allowed to give time and space for developing that project. And I think the contracts can be designed for that. We have some learnings to see from pre-2017 era. And then the connectivity earmarking. Encouraging to hear that government is considering or is giving ears to that. So thanks for that, sir. Deepak ji, coming to you, do you see this connectivity puzzle and then there are novel methods of transferring of connectivity or paying for connectivity in other countries, as you might have seen. So is there a novel mechanism through which people can book transmission capacity in a sector that we have, transmission capacity booking and then transferring of that to the other entities? Say for example, people who have the best, companies which have the best know-how of the projects, they develop it for some time and then they transfer the connectivity to the other financial institutions. Possible, or any papers have been done on this? Please feel free.
Yeah, so I think that option is definitely something which can be considered. And transferring need not be the case. Let's look at the case of data centers, for example, where these big tech companies are putting in billions of dollars. There's one tech company in India that laid down its own transmission connectivity for its data centers, correct? So big, large end consumers of electricity, be it tech companies or AI companies, they can also potentially be given the freedom to lay down their own transmission utility. So that is the first point. The second point is that, on green hydrogen, for example, we can learn from a few states in India. So there's one state in India that released a land allocation policy prior to the launch of the state level green hydrogen mission, correct? Which means, building that infrastructure for, power evacuation, and also for ensuring that the power reaches the end consumer at designated points is the onus or the responsibility of the government itself. That's the second point. And third point, from the National Green Hydrogen Mission, we are trying to position ourselves as exporters of hydrogen and ammonia. In that case also, building the port infrastructure initially is again government's responsibility, and we cannot rely on private developers, because as of now private developers don't have the visibility there. So on these particular aspects, grid connectivity, transmission capability, etc., I think the initiation has to be done by the governments, and later on when there is significant demand, private players can definitely chip in, Aditya.
Yeah.
Aditya,
Yeah,
let
please,
me
sir.
come in on to this, the transfer of this connectivity. So here the one question is very much important, which we need to understand, that whether the connectivity is granted to the legal entity or the connectivity is connected to the infrastructure. So infrastructure means immovable property.
Yes, project.
So yeah, project. So if the connectivity is granted to the legal entity, then the transfer is possible, because it's very easy. Let's write companies, one company names or the legal entity. But if it is connected with the infrastructure and movable, so this is what the basic structural things which, like if we give the connection to the consumers. So we give the consumers, we see that the survey or land survey or area or whatever the agency. So the connection is given to that house. It's not given to the person name. Person name may be there. So if the person name is there, it can be transferred one to others. So that is where the nature of the connectivity which we in our electricity sectors is something which is larger than only assigning to the one person, but it is connected to the immovable properties. So the transfer causing difficulties at that point. And that is one legal point which I thought I can share with you.
Absolutely right, sir. But you also know that there are challenges in these SPV structures, which probably were discussed in other discussions. Yeah. So probably food for thought, and we can think about it. But definitely we could figure out the problem, and there is some solution that is needed for this connectivity issue. Now, I would kindly request Dr. Dash to please summarize if you want to, or Dinesh sir, both of you can help in summarizing the discussion if it could bring out some fruitful discussions. And yes, I think we have 5 minutes, no problems.
With the consent of my colleague here, basically, I think what we discussed today, Aditya, thanks for moderating it in the precise manner that you wanted. But it is, how can we really link the growth of wind to the community-based, biomass-based approach? So that is where we all of us felt that obviously it's doable. It's not that it cannot be done, but it needs some kind of experimenting the various acceptance levels by various stakeholders, including the policymakers, government, state governments, actually the beneficiaries. So some kind of pilot-based approach would be beneficial in that case. That was one of the prime takeaways, that if we can look at it. Probably in this era of renewable energy, green energy transition, when we are looking at the 2030 or even now 2035 agenda, we are looking at higher penetrations of wind, higher penetrations of solar, and obviously other hydro biomass as well. In that scenario, the major challenge before the industry, and you brought out very well, is how can we accelerate the growth? How can we accelerate the commissioning of projects in terms of numbers? We did record breaking this year, I think 50 gigawatt plus, thanks to MNRE and all the stakeholders who are associated, including the distribution companies and state governments. But we cannot stop at this level because our appetite and growth story is much higher. And therefore, when we look at scaling up wind from 6 gigawatt at today's level to 10 gigawatt or 12 gigawatt in the coming years, there has to be some structural reforms in terms of how the projects are built, how the approvals are granted, and then obviously how the investment community will look at it. So therefore, there are certain key points that we discussed in terms of allocation of transmission. Can the development be well in advance in terms of the infrastructure, and then followed by the real asset built up. So overall points discussed between wind and biomass. Obviously, biomass is a concept which this country has seen for the last 40, 50 years or even before that. And it has grown but couldn't get that traction of exponential growth which solar and wind somehow have got it. We believe that today's engaging discussions will bring some highlights to this in terms of policy thought process, and probably when we meet next, we'll have some kind of positive pathways in terms of pilots as well. So probably on behalf of all of us, I thank you for moderating the session.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, any concluding remarks from your side? And then we also have time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience if there are. No questions. So with your permission, panelists, I'll conclude this session. Thank you once again for joining us for this interesting discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We request you to be there. And thank you so much for that engaging discussion on our thematic session on windy times, onshore and offshore gushers. Of course, we thank all our panelists for sharing those groundbreaking ideas. And now we request our moderator, Mr. Aditya Pyasi, to kindly felicitate all our panelists, Mr. Dinesh Jagdale from Suzlon Energy. Sir, thank you so much for your time and your contribution to the session. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Dinesh Jagdale. Thank you so much. We now request you to kindly felicitate Dr. Prabir Kumar Das from MNRE. Sir, thank you so much for all the ideas that you have shared. We also request you to kindly honor Dr. Deepak Yadav from CEEW. Thank you so much, sir, for gracing the occasion and for being with us today. So we request you to kindly felicitate Mr. Manish M. Chaudhary from Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, that is CERC. Thank you so much, sir. And now I request Mr. Gaurav Kedia, Chairman IBA, to kindly come forward and felicitate our moderator, Mr. Aditya Pyasi from IWTMA, for moderating the discussion so seamlessly. Thank you so much. That was our thematic session on windy times, onshore and offshore gushes. And now I request everybody to kindly come forward for the group photograph. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your hands together. With this, we conclude the last thematic session for the day 1 event of 5th edition of BBB International Expo and Summit 2026. In a short while from now, we will be having technical presentations. Thank you so much. We request you to kindly allow us some transition time, and we will be coming up with our 3 technical presentations back to back. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.